My name is Sharon Farlinger. I'm a Senior Programs Officer at the CFI. I have been here for 16 years, and this is, I think, my sixth Innovation Fund competition. And I welcome all of you and thank you very, very much for your participation. Our whole being depends on you. And so again, thank you for accepting to participate in the expert committee, the various expert committees that you will be involved on, each of you. I will, just a quick note, I'm also joined in the background by a couple of my colleagues, and so you may hear another voice queuing some questions. So Natalie Rubeck and Veronique Goujon, who are both Senior Programs Officers, are joining me today as well. So for any of you who haven't participated in a CFI review process before, some of this information, a lot of the information will be duplicate for anybody that has participated, but we just want to make sure everybody is on the same page. So the mandate of the CFI is to increase the capability of Canada's universities, colleges, research hospitals, and not-for-profit research organizations across the country to carry out high-quality research. And we do this by investing in research infrastructure. And so in research infrastructure can include the equipment, so mass spectrometers. It could be space, so we do fund renovations, we fund construction projects, all to enable the research that is going across Canada. And we fund all areas of research, from the most fundamental through the very applied research, and in all fields of research across social sciences and humanities, health, engineering, natural sciences. So it's all the gamut across Canada. Our awards are made to institutions, and so our partners are the institutions across Canada, and our awards aren't made to specific individual researchers. Absolutely, the research projects are led by specific researchers, but our funding actually goes to the institutions. And we fund up to 40% of a project's eligible infrastructure costs. So essentially the total project costs, we will fund up to 40% of those. And the remainder is made up by contributions from provincial governments and other public, private, and not-for-profit organizations who make various institutional contributions, or vendors, for example, who will provide their support through additional rebates or discounts to the institutions. And we also fund, in order to help institutions with the operations and maintenance of the infrastructure that they're awarded, we provide up to 30% of a CFI award. So this is an automatic. Once, it's not anything that you will have to review going through, but once a project has gone through the process and is approved and awarded the funding, we automatically allocate 30% of the CFI award to that institution through our infrastructure operating fund. And again, this is to help to support the operating and maintenance costs of the infrastructure that they've been awarded. In this particular competition, we have a total budget of $520 million. Of that, $400 million will go towards the research infrastructure costs in the various proposals that you will look at, and then the subsequent review process committees will look at and make decisions on. And then the $120 million is that from the infrastructure operating fund, which I mentioned, and it's 30% of the $400 million award. So the three main objectives of this particular competition are shown on the screen. One is to enable internationally competitive research or technology development through the equitable participation of expert team members. Enhance and optimize the capacity of institutions and research communities to conduct the proposed research or tech development programs over the useful life of the infrastructure. and which lead to social, health, environmental, and/or economic benefits for Canadians. So just a quick touch point on a couple of these terminologies in here. So we fund research and tech dev. So as I mentioned, we fund activities right through the spectrum of research from fundamental to applied. And in terms of useful life of the infrastructure, what we mean is that we want to ensure that they have a plan to sustain their infrastructure so that it is usable throughout the course of, oops, sorry about that, going too fast here, a course of the research, so that they will have what they need for the duration of the research that they've proposed. We received the proposal submissions in July. And so this slide outlines the timeline through to the final decisions, which are made by our board of directors. So the expert review committees will meet. We have 67 committees, all meeting virtually, and they will take place between, I think there's one committee meeting at the very end of September, but the majority of them are in October through mid-January. And the role of the expert review committee is to look at each proposal on its own merit and with the information provided within the proposal. And then this is information that you will look at each review criterion, and we'll discuss these more, but addressing the strengths and weaknesses within each of the criteria and rating them accordingly. The expert committees will not make funding recommendations, but the ratings that are given will help us determine which are fundable, if you will, and meet the threshold of excellence to go to the next stage of review. There is an expert committee report, and many of you may know, but will be very happy that you don't have to write these reports. So we write them, but we will follow up with the chair of the committee or the member if there is no chair, just to make sure that the reports we have written reflect the dialogue and the ratings given at the meeting. Then at the end of March 2023, the multidisciplinary assessment committees will meet, and there will be 13 committees that will review a group of proposals, and typically based on the size of the proposal. So the very large complex projects, for example, will be reviewed by a specific or more than one MAC. And we do have a specific MAC that will review proposals from smaller institutions. And this is, we just want to make sure that there is equitable and fair review throughout the process. And I'll just quickly step back, sorry, to the expert committee review. All of the projects have been, and the proposals have been put together, if you will, in what we call bins, but similar types of research being done or using similar types of infrastructure being done have been put together so that each committee is looking at proposals in somewhat of a similar area, so that we can take advantage of the expertise of a number of reviewers on that committee to assess them. So the MACs are different in that they are put together and they are looking at very different proposals, but they are looking at it from the competition objective perspective, and so they will rate the proposals based on the objectives and against one another, whereas the expert committees are looking at them one by one on their own merit. The MAC review starts looking at them together, and they will identify the proposals that demonstrate the highest standard of excellence and best meet the 3 competition objectives. And it is these groups that will provide a funding recommendation and a funding amount for each proposal for the next stage of review. On the funding amount, we don't automatically take off any certain amount so that we can fit more awards in. We expect that the institutions have put together these budgets very thoughtfully, and so in order to do the research they propose, they need this funding. unless there are items that are ineligible for CFI funding, or unless the experts and then the MAC have deemed certain aspects of the infrastructure requested to be not fully justified or not necessary for the research. So the final stage will then take place in May, and the Special Multidisciplinary Assessment Committee will only meet if the MAC puts forward more proposals than there is funding available, and this has always happened. So we anticipate that this single committee will meet in May, and they will, one, ensure the consistency among the multidisciplinary assessment committees, and they will make funding recommendations for proposals that, one, most effectively support the CFI's mandate, meet the objectives of the competition, and represent the most effective portfolio of investments for Canada. Then finally, the CFI Board of Directors will make the final funding decisions. Throughout the process, excellence is the main driver through all of these different pieces and stages of the review. And at the very end, after the board decisions are made, all institutions will receive copies of the review reports, so the expert committee review report. And these reports will have the names of the members on the committee as well as their affiliations, but they are consensus reports. So there is no specific information in a report that is attributed to one individual reviewer on the committee. These are consensus reports from the committee as a whole. I'm not going to show this video today. It is available both in our CAMS, our online portal, awards management portal, and that is where you will get all of your information and review materials. So the link is there, and it's also available on our website under the Innovation Fund review tab. And this is just about a 5-minute video that just gives you an overarching view of what is an expert committee and what is the role within the bigger picture of this competition. Oh, and I don't want to do this. There we go. I'll save you that for now, because definitely you can take a look at it later. So again, each expert committee will review each proposal, and you'll discuss it in turn. These take about 45 minutes to 1 hour per proposal to go through each of the assessment criteria, to comment on them, and to come to a consensus rating. In some of the committees where there's more proposals, one or more reviewers will be assigned as a lead to start off the discussion with the committee for that given proposal, going again through the assessment criteria one by one and providing input and their thoughts on the proposal in terms of the strengths and weaknesses of each assessment criterion. And then all of the committee members will have an opportunity to discuss and to participate in the discussion after the lead reviewers have discussed theirs. Following the discussion, the committee must come together then to provide an overall assessment of the strengths and weaknesses of the project and to reach a consensus on the degree to which the proposal satisfies the assessment criteria standards. And this leads us to the ratings. So the CFI uses a 5-point scale, assessment scale, and they're outlined here. Really what you're looking for is, based on the criterion standards, to what degree does the proposal satisfy those criterion standards? To help you with that, we have provided in the review material for you all the information that we have actually requested the proponents put in their proposals, and so this will help you as well. So if they satisfy the criterion standard, typically they would be rated as an essay. So the criterion standard, each one by one, is given a rating. Where you start discussing weaknesses, you then have to determine, well, are these minor weaknesses and are there just a few here and there that can be fixed? quite simply, and then you're looking at something like an SW, so satisfactory with weaknesses. Or if they're extremely significant weaknesses that are going to impact the ability to carry out the research as proposed, you're going down the scale there and looking at more a PS, a partially satisfied, or not satisfied. The EX, it doesn't mean excellent, it means exceeds. So this is where you have, there's some point that comes up in the discussion that, you know, it just really pushes the boundaries in terms of what is expected based on the criterion standard, and goes above in some way, and these will come out more as you're discussing the proposals at the meeting. And again, each meeting will have a CFI staff leading or assisting the chair, and will always be there to help determine kind of what rating makes sense. It's really important that the discussion and the decisions in terms of what the strengths and weaknesses are do match what the ratings given are at each committee. So there may be questions raised by the CFI staff at the meeting to make sure those match. So the CFI has introduced in 2020 a commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion principles. And this is more integrated in this particular competition. And we've developed our EDI strategy for this competition, both with consultation, in consultation with stakeholders across the country, and as well based on the approach of one of Canada's funding programs, the tri-agency institutional programs called the Secretariat's New Frontiers in Research Fund. And we encourage applicants to consult the best practices that was developed by this group, as well as a valuable resource when preparing their proposal. There are two key elements to our strategy. So in keeping with our commitment to EDI, we have introduced a team composition as a new criterion for this competition. And this criterion will focus on the team's consideration of systemic barriers specific to the field of research that is being explored, the principles of equity and diversity in composing the team, and then ways of ensuring an inclusive and collaborative research environment. So we will leverage the expert committee members' knowledge of the barriers and challenges in their specific fields of research to help with this. And then subsequently, the multidisciplinary assessment committee members will make use of their broader knowledge of EDI and the feedback provided by you in the expert committees to assess the degree to which the proposal satisfies the first objective of the competition. So, and then secondly, assessing expertise through more non-traditional research outputs. So for this competition, both traditional and non-traditional research outputs will be used to more inclusively assess the experience and expertise of the team members. In our proposal, we do have more, or sorry, not in the proposal, in the call for proposals, and information we have available to you outlines more detail on what this means, but it's based on and is in keeping with the San Francisco Declaration on Research Assessment, to which we are a signing party. For proposals to this competition, in the proposal itself, we had made changes to the form so that the list of published contributions section of the CV was renamed most significant contribution, and it now allows applicants to include a wide range of research outputs and impacts not limited to published contributions. Oops, I think I skipped. Oh, I'm going to go. So I'm going to go just, I'm not going to spend a great deal of time within each of the research criterion. There are 7 criteria, assessment criteria, and each of these has a criterion standard. And so the first criterion is research or technology development. And the standard that you will be assessing the proposal against is that the research or technology development program are innovative, feasible, and internationally competitive. Now, in the review material that we will provide, we have outlined what we have asked the participants and the proponents to include in that section. And so reviewing the material, specifically the guidelines for expert committee members, this information is there for you. For any questions you may have going through the process, you will soon receive confirmation of the CFI staff member that will be leading the committees with you, and you can ask any questions of them. In the meantime, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us using the email that you have at the 2023 Innovation Fund email address to ask any questions you might have. The second assessment criterion is team expertise. And the standard is that the team comprises the breadth of experience and expertise needed to conduct the proposed research program. So essentially what we need to make sure, or you may need to make sure, is that they have everybody they need on their team to make sure that they're able to carry out the programs that they've put in place and have proposed to us. This is the new standard that I spoke about a moment ago, the team composition. And the standard is that principles of equity, diversity were considered in composing the team, including in its leadership. There is a commitment to create an inclusive environment where all team members are fully integrated and supported in the research team. So the next two slides have a little bit of guidance in terms of, you know, what might satisfy these types of criterion. So first is looking at that they have addressed specific challenge or systemic barriers within their fields of research. So they've identified these and they provided some examples or data. So we don't expect them to outline or give a shopping list, if you will, of we have 2 women and 3 people of color. We don't want that. What we want them to do is to describe how they've expanded, if you will, their scope of how they include people on their team so that it is inclusive, and they are trying to break down some of the barriers within their research field specifically. These could include bias in hiring practices, limited distribution of job opportunities. So if you see these types of conversations and discussion within the proposals themselves, these are what we're looking for here. Second, concrete practice to overcome these systemic barriers. How have they done this? Do they offer EDI training, for example, to their hiring panelists? Do they do some outreach to try to reach more diverse pools of potential trainees or researchers? And so we will provide this as well to you. I won't go through in word by word, but these are just to help you while you're reading the proposal and then at the committee itself to determine whether or not they satisfy that criterion standard. The second slide provides where they would fail or or partially satisfy only this criteria. So I'll just give you a quick second to look at this. Again, we will provide this information to you at the committee meetings and as part of the review material, but just to provide you some examples today and to generate some questions if you have them. Okay. The next assessment criterion is infrastructure. And so what we want to make sure is that the infrastructure they're requesting or the space they're requesting is necessary and is appropriate to conduct the research that they're planning. And it optimally enhances their existing capacity. And so what we mean by this is that it's not duplicating infrastructure in their lab or in their in the areas that they have direct access to at their institutions, but that they're expanding on that. They're increasing their capacity and capabilities with the requested infrastructure. Next, and I had touched on this earlier, is sustainability. What we want to make sure here is that the infrastructure they are requesting will be optimally used, operated, and sustained over its useful life through tangible commitments. There are a couple parts here. We want to make sure that the infrastructure they're requesting isn't going to just sit there unused most of the time, but they have a plan on how to ensure that they have access to it, obviously, to do the research that they're proposing, but also that if there is time and availability, that they allow others to make use of it. And this could help to also to generate by user fees some financial contributions to help them in sustaining that infrastructure, because we know from many pieces of equipment it's quite costly, and the 30% that we provide in infrastructure operating funds is quite a drop in the bucket. So there's ways and plans. They don't have to have other users if they're going to use it, but we want to make sure it is going to be optimally used, and that they have the resources available in some way through user funds, through the facility, through their institution, to ensure that they have the right people and enough funds to operate it throughout the project. And finally, we want to make sure there are benefits that will come from the research they're doing. And benefits could be in like social, economic, health, environmental benefits. For the more fundamental, we are often asked this question, the very fundamental research, sometimes the benefit is just knowledge to allow for the next stage of research to bring this forward to, in health, for example, to clinical research. So their benefits is quite a big word, but we want to make sure that they have a plan on how they are going to, like, what are the benefits and how are they going to communicate those and transfer those results of the research or tech dev that they're doing to the next users, whoever those users might be. It might be the community and the world at large, or it could just be the next stage in the research, depending on what it is. So you will have, this information will have been provided to you, and definitely when you log into your account in our CFI awards management system, you'll be asked about conflicts of interest, just to make sure that ultimately it's an unbiased as possible review process, and then that the rigor of the process is upheld. We take great pride in that. And so this just outlines some of the pieces that we might identify as a real or perceived conflict of interest. And also that the whole review process is confidential. And so there's the expectation of the members and any reviewers, and as well as observers, that everything is maintained as confidential. The conversations that take place during the committee are confidential, and any review material that you have is appropriately destroyed or deleted from your computer, essentially at the end of the process. And just a quick note on observers. In your committees, there will be some observers either from the CFI, so we do have used them as staff training opportunities, but also the provincial, we invite observers from the provincial funding authorities, where a specific project might request funding, partner funding from a given province or multiple provinces. We invite those provinces to allow one observer per province or territory to observe, just as a way of sharing and managing resources, and making sure that it's as efficient a process as possible for everybody involved. And so we do have sharing agreements in place with the vast majority of our provinces and territories to ensure that, again, the materials are being shared appropriately and all confidentiality is maintained. This next slide just provides a quick snapshot of the 2023 Innovation Fund competition. And it shows on the map itself, it shows how many proposals in brackets that we received to the competition and the amounts that they've requested from the CFI. So in total, we received 297 proposals requesting over $1 billion from the CFI. And in total, these projects are valued at about just over $3 billion. We received proposals from 63 different institutions, and of these, 57 proposals had 3 or more collaborators. And so for these proposals, I'll speak about them in a minute, but we allowed them to include an additional 5% that will help to manage these multi-institutional projects. So at the very end of the committee, we will have taken notes throughout the committee meeting. There will be a committee lead from the CFI, as well as for larger committees, somebody from the CFI helping to take notes. And we write the reports. We draft the consensus reports. And this will include the consensus assessment of each criterion, comments on the strengths and weaknesses, and assessment of the budget. We will finalize these in consultation with the chair, or again, if there's not a chair, with the members. These expert committee reports will then be provided to the multidisciplinary assessment committees to guide their discussions. And as I mentioned before, we will also provide these at the end of the process to the applicant institution. So once you access our awards management system, which is CAMS, this is kind of what your screen will look like. You are entering into what we call a reviewer dashboard. And there is a tab called, so you'll have 2 tabs. One is review and documentation, and that will provide, sorry, I don't have a screenshot of that, but it will provide you with, you'll have access to all the proposals, the expert committee guidelines, a preliminary review template that you can use to jot down your notes. These are really, really helpful to us so that we make sure we have the right terminology. So while we don't expect you at all to take vigorous notes, but your notes are very helpful, point form or otherwise. And then on this particular tab that you're seeing here is where you can input your rating ahead of time. Again, this isn't shared with the applicants. This is just to help us manage the committee when we get to that date, especially if there is kind of a divergence of opinion, so that we know where we might need to spend some more time. So you can input your rating, their drop downs, and then under the comments column, you can insert some of your notes there. Or you can, as I mentioned, there is a review template. You can use that instead and send that to us by email to the committee lead. So there's a couple different ways that you can provide that information to us. Essentially, this is your portal, though, to all the information that you will need for the review. So what do we need you to do before you get to the meeting? Well, first you have to activate your CAMS account. So you will have received an email that provides you with the link to the CAMS website, as well as it will let you get in right away. It will ask you to change your password, and it will ask you for some statistics, some demographic statistics. This isn't shared. This is, again, just for internal information. However, we do accumulate the different information, all those pieces of information in a collective way to report to the government as per our requirements. We ask you to complete unconscious bias training. It's an online link, and that information is provided to you in the guidelines for expert committees. And again, that document is in the CAMS, your portal. And we ask you to read the proposals. Well, first read the guidelines, and then read the proposals. There's a quick reference guide, just as it's a quick reference, so that you can see, okay, what are each of the criterion, each of the assessment criteria, their standards, as well as some additional information in terms of what was asked of the applicant. The meeting agendas will be put up as soon as they're ready for the once the lead has put that together. And essentially what we will do is we'll give a few minutes at the beginning of a meeting to do introductions. Just a quick, we're not going to redo this presentation here. We'll just have a couple of notes, again, reminding about conflicts of interest and confidentiality, etc. And we will go through each proposal one by one. It takes about an hour per each. We'll make sure that you have enough leg stretching time between, and we're not going to set huge long meetings. Typically, if you will review 1, 2, or 3 proposals in your committee, those can take place in one day, but anything beyond that, we are going to be spreading over 2 days. It's just too much for anybody to sit in front of a computer much longer than that. So again, your preliminary assessments are really useful to us. And so we ask you to enter your ratings and comments either in CAMS or in the preliminary report template or review template, and send those back to us about a week before the meeting. So Quebec, as one of our provinces, for as long as we've been a foundation, they have taken on the expert review process on our behalf. And we observe these, and they follow the exact same thing. There's just a few different, so for anybody that is participating on a Quebec expert committee meeting, they have a separate portal. So where you'll go, you will consent, download your review materials, and then upload your preliminary reviews. This is a screenshot of the consent. And so you're agreeing to their conflict of interest policies, which are pretty much the same. You're disclosing the disclosure and compliance measures and agreeing to confidentiality. And again, it's very similar to ours, if not exactly the same. And then in their specific portal, they'll share the documents with you, and then you will upload your review material in a zipped file onto that portal. So it's just a little bit different. And I think I've very quickly covered off what an expert committee review entails. Again, I thank you very much for your participation, and I welcome any question. One of the questions is, how do we confirm whether we are involved in Quebec stuff? Okay, so if your email indicates a Quebec agency, so for example, the FRQS, or there's FRNT, I believe, you will be in the Quebec process. And so the easiest way is you always communicate with whoever you've received an email from to start with, and then they will provide you with the information you need. In terms of agendas, once the team, so the CFI lead of a committee has everything in order in terms of a date set, for example, and time set, as well as a complete committee, they will prepare the agenda and post that on CAMS as soon as possible. So a doodle will be sent for each committee. So if you haven't received a doodle yet, that just means that we're probably trying to recruit 1 or 2 more members to the committee. But for the majority of those, I think what we are starting to do is to start to schedule those regardless and recruit the last members of the committee with dates that are set. In terms of the reports that we write, the expert committee names, member names and affiliations, so no other information other than the organization or the institution that you work with. So your name and institution essentially will be included on the report. Again, our institutions know that these are consensus reports and that no information anywhere in the report is ever specifically attributed to a given member. So we don't say, well, Dr. X said this. The committee has agreed on these strengths, weaknesses, and comments. What we are going to do after this presentation, we are recording it, and we will put both the presentation as well as the recording of this webinar onto our website so that anybody that hasn't had an opportunity to be here or to view it will be able to look at it later, or if you have to remind yourself of anything, it will be available for you as well. In terms of, as I mentioned, we're trying to set the meetings as soon as possible. I think there are maybe only about 15 meetings left to schedule a date, and we're working hard to get those scheduled very quickly. They will likely be pushed further and not be, for example, in September or October, but looking more towards the end of November, December. But you'll receive likely a doodle poll very soon. If you're reviewing a submission from researchers working at a university in Quebec, does that matter? No. So most of the proposals that have been submitted to this competition from an institution in Quebec will be part of the Quebec review process at the expert committee level. However, some of them, especially where they involve a number of different institutions across the country, or like even a few in other provinces, oftentimes we will shift those over to the CFI to take care of the expert review. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. It's the same criterion standards and criteria, and we observe those meetings and work very closely with our counterparts in Quebec to make sure that it's a very similar process. In terms of the review meetings, if yours hasn't been scheduled yet, it will be very soon. You will likely receive a doodle poll soon. And a question about the collaborating. So is there a preference for having 3 or more collaborating institutions involved in a proposal? It really depends on the proposal and the project that they're proposing. Some are just very specifically being conducted at one institution. Oftentimes they have users though come in, so not necessarily collaborators, but have users coming in from different institutions or accessing the infrastructure in some way. And again, infrastructure can be databases and tools, etc. And so there's not a preference, no. It all depends on the material.
Yes, hello. I'm just curious, I asked in the chat box about this as well. It sounded like in the committee stage that one person may be put as sort of the lead reviewer for a proposal after we're in there. And will that be told us in advance of the first meeting or?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So what we'll do is, as the meeting is prepared on our end, we will develop these, what we call assignments, and these will be communicated to you. And oftentimes we put up as well a document that summarizes that into your portal as well, your review portal as well. So there's a couple of different ways you'll get that information.
Perfect, thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. And there's another question. It says, before I even look at the team members from any of the proposals I have been assigned to, I wanted to ask how to navigate any potential conflicts that may arise. If you have any questions, reach out to us. Typically, we look at a 6-year window where you've collaborated closely with someone in either a research grant, a paper you've published together, you've been a mentor or a trainee, or worked very closely in a department with somebody within the last 6 years. But if you're unsure, reach out to us with your specific circumstances and we'll help you navigate that. The link to the bias training is in the guidelines for expert committees, so in the document itself. Those are available to you in CAMS already. So when you sign in, log into your CAMS account and go into the committee, the 2023 Innovation Fund Committee that you are a member of, one of the review material pieces is the expert committee guidelines, and the link is in there. I think what we'll do too is actually include it as a separate link, just so that it makes it easier for you to find. And again, I encourage you, if you have any questions, please reach out to us. We're happy to answer your questions and help you navigate this, and welcome you. And thank you to those that are coming back to help us with this. Your contributions are invaluable and very much appreciated. And we look forward to working with you. And I think there's no more questions. So again, thank you. And I wish you a wonderful day.